how are you doing? I hope you're doing so great. Today we're going to study a new topic, third conditional. So, let's start. Third conditional. The third conditional is structure used for talking about unreal situations in the past. The third conditional is totally unreal because when we use third conditional, we are imagining a different past. We often use the third conditional to talk about regrets. We use the third conditional if plus past perfect, would plus have plus past participle to talk about something in the past that did not happen. For example, if he had studied harder, he would have passed the exam. For example, here, the first action, studying hard, did not happen. But in the case that it happened, the consequence was passing the exam. Remember that the third conditional is very similar to the second conditional, but while the second conditional refers to something unrealistic now or in the future, the third conditional refers to something unrealistic in the past. We often use the third conditional to express regrets, describing things we are sorry happened or didn't happen. For example, if my alarm had gone off, I wouldn't have been late for work. So here's an example of third conditional, right? So, how do we create the third conditional? Let's see. To make a sentence in the third conditional, we used if plus past perfect plus would or wouldn't have plus past participle. For example, if you had told me about the meeting, I would have come. But let's see the same example. If you have told me about the meeting, I would have come. In this case, you are using I would have come, the affirmative form. But what about if we make the same sentence or almost the same but with a negative statement? For example, if you had told me about the meeting, I wouldn't have missed it. So, in this case, you are using like a negative statement. And if you notice the structure, first you have the word if, then the subject, then you have the word had told me, that is the past perfect, right? Also the complement. After the comma, you will have always the subject, also would plus have in the verb. But in the second case, you have almost the same, but instead of would, you will use wouldn't. As with all conditionals, you can also invert this structure. Will have plus past participle plus if plus past perfect. For example, I'd have come to the meeting if you told me about it. So you change the structure, right? In this case, first you have the main clause, that is I have come to the meeting, and then you will have the if clause, right? If you told me about it. Remember that in this case you don't need a comma because you're using the if clause after the main clause. So, also I wouldn't have missed the meeting if you told me about it. So, here with the negative structure, you have first the main clause, that is, I wouldn't have missed the meeting, and then you have the if clause. If you told me about it. Here you have other examples. What would you have done if you've been me, right? This is a question. First you have the WH word, what. Then would the subject have done, that is the past participle, and then we have the if clause, right? So, if you hadn't invited me out, I'd have stayed in all day. So, in this case, if you notice, first you have the if clause, if you hadn't invited me out, and then you have a comma because you have the main clause after the if one. If they hadn't won that match, the club would have fired the manager. So, also here you have first the if clause and then the main clause. She wouldn't have given you a fine if you apologized. So, here you have some examples of third conditional, right? And also if you say, for example, if I had studied harder, that is the if clause, right? In the main clause, I would have passed the exam. In this case, I failed the exam because I didn't study hard enough. So, remember, if the if clause comes first, a comma is usually used. If the if clause comes second, there is no need for a comma. So guys, that's all for today. Have a nice day. Take care. Bye-bye.